And so as it cools into a glass. So each of these pieces is unique. Every piece is different. And I've played pieces that Tyler's looking at right now. Part of our series, these were actually cracked in the kiln. They came out, they survived, but they had some pretty severe cracks. So what I did was I employed a Japanese technique called resin and epoxy and other materials that form into the crack, and then coated that in 24 karat gold leaf. And so these pieces, I feel like instead of turning lemons into lemonade, I feel like these really kind of turned into champagne. They really went up a notch. I really like these. And then you'll see some of the evidence series on the far wall there. Those are a lot of them. These are some of the first ones I actually started with. So these were just bare clay in the wood kiln just to see what the surfaces would look like, because I really had no idea when I was starting what any of this stuff would look like. And because the way that clay and kiln work together in concert, there's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of experimentation that has to be done. So these are a series of pieces that were all made in very similar ways, but where they were placed in the kiln, the effects of the ash is different in every location. So you get different results. Some of them have warped. We call that pyroplastic. They actually get soft and move at temperature. So you'll see one of the ones coming up soon is has a very dramatic curve in it. And that is because it got so hot that the clay started to melt. But my main thought in all of this work really was, in the midst of all the stuff that we've gone through this last year and the struggles and the strife and all that stuff, was very evocative of what happens in the kiln. It's a really harsh environment. There's a lot of things that happen in the kiln, a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of things that can be rectified. But in the end, the clay was designed to survive. I didn't put clay in the kiln that wouldn't make it. And so I just feel like that's just an analogy of hope for what we've been going through as a society, and a message that I feel we really need. But yeah, so there's also some other pieces in this exhibit. I work with slip casting. I started slip casting this last year, and working with forms and keeping the forms all the same, but modifying the way that the glaze is applied, modifying the way that the kiln, where they go in the kiln, and playing with those kind of surfaces and techniques to get different results. And it's been a huge learning curve, but it's been really exciting to play. And the nice thing about when we're in lockdown is that I can still fire my kiln. So I got a lot of work done. When everybody else was in home watching Netflix, I was in the studio making pots, making work. Okay, all right. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat in the Facebook feed, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. You can zoom in on this bowl here. This has got some really beautiful crystallizing. Started to pull and melted down and interacted with that glaze to make that turquoise. a lot about how to fire the kiln and how to get these results more consistently.
We do have a question.
Okay.
What are the greatest challenges you've dealt with to get to the current state of your art?
Greatest challenges? There's been a huge technical hurdles to get over. Clay doesn't like to be flat and wide. And because the temperature variations in the kiln, it can be 2000 degrees at the bottom of this and 1800 degrees at the top. And that 200-degree difference is enough to cause these kind of cracks. And it could be even less than that. It could be just 50 degrees top to bottom is enough to cause some major fractures. So getting the clay body formulated correctly, and I started slip casting because I was starting with rolled slabs, and those are just coming out as crumbles. So, but slip casting allows the particles to settle in a way that stay relatively flat. My next big goal for this work is to go big. So I'd love to go 4 feet by 4 feet, so you really can see the subtlety and kind of almost map the flame path in the kiln. That's really exciting, but just to go from this to the next stage, which is like this, is huge. And then to go even bigger, I'm gonna have to build a kiln around it. So we'll see how that goes. So there's a lot of science, there's a lot of trial and error and just plain dumb luck when it comes to this kind of stuff. So yeah, those are some of the biggest challenges. Any other questions? If not,
we do have another one.
Okay.
If you were to start over again, what would you do different?
If I were to start over, I don't know what I would do differently. The work kind of has evolved to this point, starting with those, well, even before this is probably the earliest piece here. This is where I started to really think about how I could take these shapes that are formed by the flame patterns and then flattening them out into into the two-dimensional or the shallow dimensional forms. But I don't know if I would do anything differently, just because I wouldn't be in the same place that I'm at now if I were to start different. That's all for me, I guess. All right.
Okay, I'm Martha Coaty, and I'm one of the recipients this time around with the Ram Art Museum Fellowship. It has been a true honor to be selected for this, and not very intimidating whatsoever. But the beginning of this process opened my mind to curate myself instead of entering different juried shows or selecting things for a gallery. I was thrilled to be able to just loosen up and take photographs of things that I really wanted to take photographs of without thinking that they would be used for anything necessarily. I didn't want to do anything virtual during the pandemic year, and I swore that I would not take any pandemic photographs. But guess what? I ended up taking several. So I want to walk over here. When the announcement came that we were closing the country for 2 weeks, a remarkable thing happened in my neighborhood and along the lake shore. People were out walking around and talking to one another, but yet it was a very lonely feeling for the beach. It was foggy this day. It was the first day, and I saw this woman walking this Toto-like dog on the beach, and I stopped her and I asked her if I could please take her photograph. And this is the result of that. I think it's very moody, and it set the tone for the day and what would ultimately become the year. Very lonely, very desolate, very isolated. And of course, a lot of dependence on the dogs, right? This photograph here is of a man who lives near the power plant. And for years, he's been expressing what everybody's been feeling. I like the part where it says police. I happen to work in Kenosha. And during the mayhem down there last August, this pretty much summed up everything for me. I like that it's isolating just the words. Crimes, police, people being, home, energy, and of course, satellites, because I think there was a lot of conspiracy coming from the satellites. This one here is called Bound for Glory. So when you go for a haircut, you see things, and this is on the side of the building where Chrissy Bogard has her salon. I just felt that it said Bound for Glory for some reason. I have no idea why, but it just reached out to me and talked to me, and it's sheer whiteness. I have a few more that happen to be more isolated over in this corner. A simple drive one day took us into a garage sale, but it wasn't the garage sale that was so interesting. It was this lonely woman in her apartment with her cat isolated on the other side of the window. It really spoke to me that she's apart, it's an apartment, and that a lot of people are living like that. But she is completely content sitting in the sun. Also, I take photographs where I am, wherever I might be, and I see things all the time. And a photographer, that's not the one, it's this one I want to talk about. This one. This one is from a construction zone at work. And I'm fascinated by construction to begin with, but the wooshiness of the brush strokes here created a natural painting. And I love the subdued colors in this. The green is very grounding to me. Let's go over to the meat market, which is another place I used to go a lot last year. At my local meat market and delicatessen, they were undergoing a painting project. I was fascinated by this blackboard, and I went back to photograph it several times. Finally, one of the clerks asked me what I was doing, and she told me to just stop. No more pictures. So I ended with that. No more pictures. So I would really like to thank the Osborne and Scekic family for their generous support of our fellowships while I'm talking. I also like to work in squares. These are several of my square photographs that I've been accumulating over time. On the left, the yellow one is VIP Lounge. VIP Lounge was taken at an expo center down in Chicago. And I do adore this photograph because of the pensive looks on their face. And I know that these two gentlemen are solving some sort of enormous exposition problem. It's got to be that. Coming over here to the circles, because pie goes on forever, reminds me a lot of the full circles of life. This happens to be an old crime map from the 1970s, but it's very fascinating to me, and I get really lost in it when I look at it. One of the things I strive for in my photography also is simplicity. And if we come over here to geometry, this is extremely simple to me, very soothing, very calming. Few things excite me as much as simplicity. I think you can tell a story with just a few lines, as you can see in this one. And the color of blue in that photograph too strikes me as something you could really dive into and stay a while. Coming over here, we have some little geometric things going on here. This photograph here, seersucker. I want to mention Harry Worth, who passed away a couple years ago. He so proudly gave me an award on this photograph. This is seersucker, and it does remind me of the clothing. And now Harry, forever, right? Harry Worth, if you knew him, he was a wonderful guy. Okay, what else can we talk about in here? Over here we have my sails. I've been really fascinated with the tall ships for many years. And I was wondering last time around how I was ever going to get photographs of those tall ship sails as they came down the lakefront, until it occurred to me that maybe I should just buy a ticket and hop on the boat, which I did. It was the most exciting day. And I took photographs all day, all evening. So, well, that's about all I have to say about my work in here. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.
We do have a question.
Oh, okay.
We have a question from Diane Rufo, who asks, what is your training or education in photography?
Well, Diane, I was an art minor in college. So I was studying art. I actually don't study photography. I do study paintings and artworks. And that is my strength for finding composition and balance. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Ram.
Sorry about that. So they're moving up to the second floor so that we can hear from those artists. And I'm just going to give you a brief history of the RAM Artist Fellowship. It's really the idea of place that grounds these awards. They're meant to honor the dedication, focus, and drive of artists in the area in this place. This exhibition, which is really 5 solo exhibitions, brings together artists with diverse interests, approaches, backgrounds, genders, etc., under the umbrella of place, specifically Racine and Kenosha counties east of I-94. The geographic parameters are very important to the sponsors, the Osborne and Scekic Family Foundation, as they so strongly believe in the artists in this place and the creativity and potential of this place. One goal of this award is to encourage area artists who want to take their work and their presentation of it to new levels, while RAM and Wustum hope to inspire creative individuals at any point in their art making practice. The Fellowship Artist and Emerging Artist Award is a more formal acknowledgement of the effort needed to pull together opportunities, talents, and determination to achieve their goals. This exhibition is the 5th since this award series began in 2012. To clarify, the jury selects artists in an even year, such as 2020, and artists begin to plot and plan and make work for the exhibition, which takes place in the following odd year, 2021. So basically there's not quite 2 years, closer to about 21 months between selection and exhibition. Artists are free to use the monetary award in whatever way they see fit. And the solo exhibition, again, within this larger exhibition cycle, finishes out the award period. For the first 4 cycles, 4 artists were awarded, but with this 5th cycle, which we celebrate tonight, a 5th artist award was added, dedicated to focusing on emerging artists. During the application process, artists choose whether or not they want to be considered for this award. The eligibility requirements for all of these awards have changed over time as new dynamics are brought to light, and interested artists are encouraged to review the criteria regularly with each cycle. An aspect may have changed. The first person that will speak in this second half of our program is speaking in honor of someone, and we pause for a moment to honor Christopher Johns, who passed away midway through his fellowship award period. It is with deep appreciation that we extend our thanks to his family, who focused their efforts on making this exhibition happen despite this unexpected loss. Bruce W. Pepich, RAM Executive Director and Curator of Collections, familiar with Chris John's work for some time, will speak on behalf of the artist. He will be followed by another fellowship recipient from this year, Marc Travanti, and then we'll end the presentations on a high note with Emerging Artist Award winner René Amado. The program will end with a moment to acknowledge and address any questions for those artists, and with a few closing remarks from me.
Good evening. I'm Bruce W. Pepich. I'm Executive Director and Curator of Collections at the Racine Art Museum. Since Christopher K. Johns is unable to speak about his work this evening, I've been asked to say a few words about him and about his career. Chris was a Racine native who was born in 1952. He studied art at UW-Milwaukee before moving on to the San Francisco Art Institute, where he received his BFA degree in painting in 1975. He obtained his MFA in painting in 1977 from Stanford University. I came across Chris's work in the late 1970s when he participated in both our Racine and Vicinity and Watercolor Wisconsin competitions and was regularly included. I came to know him better when we invited him to take part in a 6-person invitational exhibition called The View from Southeast Wisconsin. Like our current fellowship exhibition, this invitational show provided each artist with one gallery for a small-scale solo presentation of his or her work. The goal was to focus on talent from this corner of the state that we believed had potential to positively influence the field. In Chris's case, we certainly got it right. The paintings on canvas and watercolor and pastel abstractions that he created at the time were the result of a sharp mind trained by intense visual observations. He was an artist devoted to investigating all aspects of color. His surfaces, regardless of the medium in which he worked, are beautiful and encourage the viewer to enter and explore. In some of these, the marks he made began to shift into letters and numbers, possibly foretelling his more recent collages incorporating found printed papers embellished with text. Chris began teaching early in his career, but his main role as an educator was as a professor of painting and drawing at Louisiana State University from 1979 through 2011, over 30 years of dedication to the young people in this field. In the late 1990s, while he was an artist in residence in Costa Rica, Chris became fascinated with the sight of rain running down the trunks of pine trees. His interest in replicating and abstracting these shapes led to an interest in the human figure. Chris began to associate the shape of a tree trunk with that of an abstracted human torso. This association is a natural connection, for we frequently refer to that central core of our bodies as our trunks. This vertical shape allowed him to play with varieties of tone, texture, and color. The works in the fellowship show are a continuation of his interest in this trunk-like shape. As with his work throughout his career, Chris used this form as a format upon which he built beautiful and thoughtful layers of color and marks. This limited format gave him a large degree of latitude in which he explored a wide range of possibilities. Chris's works created for this exhibition are a combination of abstract watercolor and found paper collage pieces and larger acrylic and ink paintings using the vertical format first inspired by the trees of the Costa Rican forests. In addition to his work in the fellowship exhibition, Ram has staged a 3-piece display of 2 of his works from the permanent collection and a third that is promised to Ram's collection. The large painting on canvas, Chris's gift to Ram in memory of his father, who was also an artist, was included in an exhibition at the American Academy of Arts and Letters in New York City. These works from his early career can help us chart the journey he made in his studio during the intervening decades. Christopher K. Johns received a State of Louisiana Visual Artist Fellowship in 1986 and a Southern Arts Federation National Endowment for the Arts Regional Artists Fellowship in 1988. His works are in a number of collections, including the Louisiana State University Museum of Art in Baton Rouge, Stanford University in California, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, and of course, the Racine Art Museum. Chris Johns is an example of the kinds of artistic excellence the Kenosha Racine community has been producing and nurturing for decades, something the community continues to generate and support today. I am consoled in the sense of loss we feel in his death by the fact that Chris was busily working on pieces for this exhibition. Many of them are here, some in their finished state and others as he left them in the studio, presented here along with a few earlier works as a memorial to his vision and commitment to the visual arts field. Thank you. Are there any questions that anybody has submitted? Okay, I guess we'll be continuing. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Marc Travanti. I grew up here in this area in Kenosha, Wisconsin. After graduate school, I moved to New York City, and while I was there, I made art, exhibited art, and taught art for more than 30 years. I moved back to this area about 3 years ago. All of these pieces are portraits drawn on pages from 8 different books. 6 of the books are art history books with images of art from the distant past or ancient times, and 2 are books of notable places in Europe. The titles of the 2 books that I use most are Drawings in the Louvre and Great Drawings of the Masters. And both of those feature drawings by European artists from the 1700s, actually from the 1400s through the 1700s. Each of the books I used is about 50 years old or older, and many of the pages are faded. But I like the fading. It reinforces the old age of the subject matter. It heightens the physicality of the paper, and it has a sensual quality. My introduction to portraiture actually occurred abruptly and unintentionally. One night while I was at my mother's house, I reached into my bag for my sketch pad and it wasn't there. So I grabbed an old art history book, which was in the bag. I opened it to a random page with a picture of an ancient Greek sculpture. And I thought, why don't I just draw a picture of myself on this page? So I picked up my cell phone and took a picture of my face. I put the book on my lap, held the phone in my right hand so that I could see the picture of myself. And with my left hand, I proceeded to draw a self-portrait directly on the picture of the Greek sculpture. The next night, I used the same procedure to do another self-portrait, this time on a picture of a church interior in the Netherlands. In both of the self-portraits, the interaction of one image on another surprised me. I saw harmony in the mixture of shapes and lines from 2 different images, and I saw tension in the narrative reading of 2 images from different time periods. Also, I realized I stumbled upon an art process that was portable and convenient. All that was required was a book and some pencils, and it could be done almost any time and anywhere, including while spending time with my 88-year-old mother. My satisfaction with the entire process and the results led to over 150 portraits, completed essentially in the same manner. 45 of those portraits are in this exhibition. After doing the first 2 self-portraits, I did a couple more, and then I began drawing family and friends. Later, I drew some well-known people in the fields of acting, politics, and newscasting. While composing each portrait, my intent was to achieve a likeness of a person. However, in most cases, I was looking for a facial expression that was not typical of that person, an expression unknown to me and possibly unknown to the person I was drawing. The integration of the drawn person and the picture it is drawn on is the primary characteristic of each piece. It's the source of content. Yet for each piece, my choice of whom to draw on which picture was not planned. Like my initial self-portraits, each choice was random. Therefore, content was not something I was working towards, but rather something I discovered during and after the drawing. This body of work reflects ideas of some of my previous art, such as mixing contemporary imagery with images from the past and integrating subject matter from 2 distinct cultures. Whether I work in the realm of painting, drawing, sculpture, photography, or ceramics, I tend to think in terms of a duality or a paradox. This picture, this portrait here, it's called Rita Travanti, drawn on 3 studies of hands. Hans Holbein did the study of hands in 1523. They are the hands of his Dutch friend Erasmus, who is considered to be one of the greatest scholars of the Northern Renaissance. I did the portrait in 2019. It's the sleeping head of my mother, who is considered to be one of the greatest mothers of Kenosha's North Side. The point here is that I am literally drawing on the past and integrating it with the present. This over here, this portrait, it's of a friend named Jason Love. He's drawn on a portrait of a young woman. Something that stands out in this portrait and some of the others is a third eye that appears on the forehead. That can happen when I draw a portrait on a portrait. And in the midst of many cultures, that third eye represents enlightenment or some form of higher consciousness. I like the eye on Jason because he is a professional magician. This portrait here is my friend Carolyn Haybeck, and it's drawn on a portrait of a lady. The combination of Caroline and the lady makes me think of the past, present, and future of a person and the intensities that can occur during certain stages of a life. During COVID, I spent a lot of time watching TV shows and movies. I began to see actors as content providers of a wide range of emotions. I realized I had access to a dictionary of emotions to be used in my drawings. Here I drew the actor Bryan Cranston while he was in the limited TV series Your Honor. It's an expression that occurred after his life was threatened. Another thought about this piece is 3 layers of identity. Bryan Cranston as himself, Bryan Cranston as the character in the show, and Bryan Cranston as combined with the head of a child. And here I drew the distinguished portrait painter Francis Bacon. He's the only person I drew who was not alive when I drew him. He died in 1992. I consider his inclusion to be a form of feedback. Feedback is information about the process of a system. Including Francis Bacon in this exhibition is supplying information about the process of making portraits. The purpose of this work is to integrate our culture with cultures from the past and to celebrate the complexity and mystery of an individual. The final stage of the art making process is to exhibit the art. It's an activity that takes insight, organization, and coordination, as well as financial support and advertising. Therefore, I would like to thank the Osborne and Scekic Family Foundation for sponsoring this exhibition, Kendra Volas and Lena Vigna for organizing it, Kiefer Waterman for hanging the work, and Tyler Potter for shooting this video. Thank you all. Any questions? Are there any questions coming on? No questions. Okay.
There's one question.
Oh,
This is from Lori. Is there a psychological component in your portraits?
yeah, I think there is a psychological component, and it's something that I discover while I'm watching, while I'm drawing and after the drawings are done. It's actually something that I discover, and it's actually, to me, the most interesting part. I feel like there's things going on that that I discover, things about the person that I didn't know before. And yes, the psychological component is something that I value in these pieces.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
There's another one? Oh, there is another one. Was there any issues drawing on older print paper?
which what?
Are there any issues drawing on older print paper?
Oh, are there any issues drawing on old print paper? Yeah, there are. It helps if it's matte, if the paper is matte and I can draw on it. I discovered on some of the images, if it was shiny paper, if it was glossy, I could draw on it. But that's when I started using white pencils and pencils that could actually dig into the gloss. And in some cases, I actually got lightness from erasing right into it. But generally, it was best to work on pictures that are matte paper. Thank you.
Hi, my name is René Amado. I am a photographer and artist from here in Racine, Wisconsin. A lot of my work is very street photography inspired. That's kind of where I started taking photography a little more serious. And so a lot of my work is based off of that. I'm going to start here with my exhibit. These are all shots from some of the low shots that I do within the lowrider community of Chicago and Milwaukee. I go to a lot of shows. I take a lot of photos. This is kind of where my photography started, because as a teenager, I used to go to a lot of lowrider shows, and I would always want to take photos of the cars, even though none of them were really any good. But, I would take photos just because, just to hang on to memories. And, these cars tend to be, they're works of art on their own when you really look at them, all the detail that goes into them, the creativity, and, what people do with them. They really are like rolling works of art. See here, like with all the pinstriping and whatnot, you get a lot of detail in there. This is something that is very much a part of my culture as a Mexican American. Chicano, this is something that we do. This is something that we're a part of. And, lowriding, a lot of people look at them as just cars and have, I guess, a bad impression of what some of the people in the community are. And, a lot of these people really aren't that bad. They're just working individuals that, like to work on their cars and really put a lot of time and effort into them and take a lot of pride in that. And, it's a lot of these cars are really extension of them. They say you don't really just drive a lowrider, you are a lowrider. So, this is something that I'm very proud of. And if we come around the corner over here, there's a couple more shots I would like to show. This one here is another one that was from one of the events. And this was in Chicago. It features a model by the name of Becca, who is very much a regular at all these shows. She does a lot of modeling within the community. And so I really like that this one just kind of features her makeup and outfit, that she shows. And sorry, it's just got that kind of cholo look to her. And, it just kind of adds to the whole, essence, the vibe of what it is that we do within the community and, the people within it. Right over here is another one that I'd kind of like to show a little bit. This one features a friend of mine by the name of Evie McNeil. And she's a local model and artist and photographer as well. She does a lot of events with modeling and photography. And last year during the shutdowns, right after like things started to open up, I think this was in May, she invited a lot of us out to this junkyard right out by the highway to go and shoot. And so, yeah, after months of being locked in and not really having a lot of contact with anybody, it was a really good idea, I thought, to, go out there and shoot. And, we got some really good imagery from it. And I call this one Beautiful Disasters because, it's just, you got beautiful model here with all this, just these busted up cars behind her. And to me, it just kind of feels like 2020, you got all this disaster and destruction behind you. And here you got somebody standing strong in all of it. So, so moving on to the next part, this next section is a lot of the photography I took during the protest last year. This one here, this was from Uptown Kenosha. And if you remember, that area was really, really, it was really affected by all of the protests. A lot of those buildings were burned down. Some of them are now demolished and gone. I do share a studio in that neighborhood with a friend of mine from Kenosha. And so when all this happened, I, got real scared and freaked out. I was wondering what was going on in the building. So I had to go down there. This was all the morning after it everything burned. So I just think this is a great shot kind of depicting the state of America in 2020, If you come down this way, there's 3 more images here that these were all shot in Kenosha during the protests. You've got an individual here who was leading some of the chants and leading some of the protests there. And I just love how he has the disobey right there, and it just really captures, I think, what was going on there at the time. And then right here next to it is the car lot that everybody was looking at on the news that got burned out. It was just so much to take in. When I remember when I showed up there and saw it all, it was just emotionally, it was just crazy to take it all in, Over here, you got a shot of the sheriffs and the police officers, blocking the courthouse and all the people behind them. There's just a lot going on from that day. I'm just kind of reflecting on it mentally. So it was a lot to see. Over here we have and those were after, all of those were after the Jacob Blake incident in Kenosha. These ones over here were earlier in the summer after George Floyd. And these were all shot here in Racine during the protests and marches that were happening here. And these are more portraits, just to kind of show some of the faces, the messages, and, the people that were there and, were demanding justice and calling out to the community to, listen to their voices. There's just so many faces out there. I remember when I was going through images trying to figure out what to show for this, it was really hard to choose, but, I feel like these ones to me were some of the strongest messages, and I really wanted people to see these ones. And this one right here, where a lot of times people use the word thug, and it's like, what exactly is that? Who does that define? And I think it's used in the wrong way a lot of times with the wrong people. Over here, these were actually, so all these photos were shot in 2020, and that's kind of the focus of my exhibit, was to just show some of these things that I shot in 2020, with the year that it was. Having my camera with me really got me through a lot of last year. These 2 were actually shot in 2019. And I just wanted to show them just because I like them. This La Tapatía is an iconic spot on the south side of Racine. I mean, everybody knows La Tapatía. You've probably eaten there before, probably a handful of times. And so that's just one of my favorite photos that, kind of shows Racine. And then over here is the corner house in Uptown. And, it's no longer there. And it's kind of a good segue into the next section of the gallery of what I have here. So last year during the pandemic, that actually shut down and moved, and it's no longer in Uptown. In this next section, these were all shot like as everything shut down. I remember in March, how everything closed, and a lot of people were kind of freaking out, not knowing what's going on and wondering what's next. And I remember I went downtown for, I don't even remember what, I think I was just out for a walk or something. And I saw all these closed signs in the windows, and I just like, the photographer, the artist, the creative, and we just kind of saw this opportunity to capture all this and record some history. These are things that none of us have ever seen and none of us have ever really gone through in our life. So, I just thought it was really important to, go from storefront to storefront and capture these. And as I was going through, I'm looking at each of these, and like in this one over here, that he just showed, it's people's handwriting. This is like a portrait of the owner of the store, in a sense. They're leaving their own messages, and a lot of them were very different and individualized. And it was just so interesting to go from storefront to storefront and look at that. And so here's a couple other ones here. I've got a whole collection of these too. Like there were so many of them. I couldn't even tell you how many. I went from store to store across the city. It was like I started in downtown, and then I just thought there's probably more places around the city like this. So I actually went across the city and shot a ton of these. So yeah, it was really hard to choose some favorites for this. But yeah, this all for the most part, like I said, was stuff that I shot in 2020. And just being able to pull out my camera and do things like this that I could go out and do on my own. I didn't really need to be around anybody. It really helped me kind of get through it and just just kind of make peace with the situation and not being able to be around as many people as I wanted to. And with these protest photos, I just really felt like this is history. Right here in our backyard, these things are happening. And, I just felt it was really important to capture that. And, with all these photos, I see the signs, I see the faces, I see the emotion and, the destruction. And, they're all in a sense, a bit of myself, the messages and the emotions and the way, everything that's in them. And yeah, I guess that's my work here. And if anybody has any questions. No? Okay.
Okay, thank you to all of the artists. And thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. There's still an opportunity if you have any questions about the exhibition in general. I just have a couple closing points. This exhibition opens tomorrow, September 1st, and runs through November 27th. Wustum is open Wednesday through Saturday from 12 to 4. Masks are currently required. And heads up that soon the parking lot will be under construction. So if you are interested in coming over for a visit, please check our website. We have word that construction should start in September, but that could change at any point. We do encourage you to come and see this work in person if you feel comfortable doing so. We do have an iPad located on the first floor that has images of the galleries upstairs for people who cannot navigate Wustum's tricky stairwells. We do thank you again for joining us this evening. Please be sure to check out ramart.org for information on upcoming exhibitions, outreach programming, and new initiatives that spotlight our growing permanent collection. And as we move toward the end of 2021, there will be announcements about the next Fellowship Artist Award and Emerging Artist Award cycle. Deadlines and juror information and all kinds of things will be available on our website. Are there any questions before we end? Okay. Okay, thank you again. And thank you again to the artists and to the staff for pulling all of this together.